Hey guys, Sean here with the Family Outdoors. I decided to come out to the woods today, do another episode for our Beginners of Bushcraft videos. In this particular video, we are going to be going over different tinders to light a fire. More specifically for this video, birch bark. Alright, so we're out. We're taking a walk around here. You can see this forest is largely pine, spruce, conifer, some swamp spruce, but not very much. But we're out looking in particular today for a very special tree to the boreal forest, and one that is used often, and that is the birch tree. You can see we got a birch right here. Birch is very easily identified by its white paper-like bark. This is white birch, this one. You can get yellow birch. And the part we're looking for today in talking about beginners of bushcraft in the boreal forest is the birch bark itself. And you can see there's some real loose hangy bits on here. This is the stuff we're going to want to harvest. It's not going to hurt the tree in any way, shape, or form, as long as you don't try to ring the tree or anything silly. But we're going to be going for the bits like this that are already loose and just barely hanging on there. Generally, when you find a birch tree, there are a few of them, so there's no need to just single out one tree and try to strip the heck out of it. Move around, find other trees. I guarantee you, you'll get a lot to utilize in the bark that's just hanging on there. So there we go. We got a good mittful of the birch bark now. This is definitely more than enough to get a fire going, probably a couple fires. I'll show you a couple ways to process this into what we need to light a fire. It's pretty maintenance free, takes a spark real well, and definitely one of the best, if not the best, natural tinder to find in the boreal forest. So another way to gain or harvest birch bark and in larger quantities is if you just go for a little walk, you'll see often that there'll be a birch tree that's down. Now, depending how long it's been down, you'll find different stages of it. This one hasn't been down for very long, so it's still pretty hard. But we can still utilize, if we chose, we could take off an awful lot of this bark. The tree's already dead. You're not going to hurt it in any way, shape, or form by harvesting that. So another way to do it is you can find these chunks like this. If it's any other season other than winter, this would be rotten enough. You could just hit it a few times and you could shake the insides out, and you would have usable birch product that way. However, it's winter and this one's frozen, but I'm going to attempt to use my knife here to strip off a ring of this. Again, you don't need very much pressure on your knife when you're doing this. It's very much like cutting paper, right? It's all about control and not about pressure. You can see once I've slit it like that, you can just peel it off in sheets like this. It's again tougher when it's frozen. If it's not frozen, you can extract it all the way around the tree using this method. A lot of people will just knock it and knock the inside out, and you can also make a pretty cool container out of it. But another way to harvest birch bark. So with our birch bark gathered now, one of the ways we can process it is take one of the chunks that we pulled off, and you'll notice this is more of a stiffed back piece. And now if that's the case, you always want to be working on something dry. This rock I know is dry. Set your birch on, take your knife, and with a little bit of pressure, just scrape back and forth with your knife. As you can see, by doing this, we are working these very fine fuzzies like this, and that is very good for taking a spark. So you just scrape yourself a little pile of those. Just like that. With it processed down fine like this, it'll take a spark fairly easily from a ferro rod. Put your ferro rod on and just direct your sparks down. So you can see right away you have flame. Now with this process you use more birch like this and just light this piece. At this point you would put it into your fire and continue to build your fire up with kindling and then of course fuel, and you would have yourself a fire. We're not quite going to do that yet because I want to go over one more way to use this bark. So the other way to do this is by taking the birch bark that we collected, the finer stuff, and generally you'll want to do it on a fireboard, your platform where you want to light your fire. I know that the fire pit here is dry and good because I just had a fire in it yesterday and we haven't had any moisture since then. So I'm going to kind of skip that step a little bit. But all you do is you take your stuff and you just work it up with your hands. Just keep working it over and over and over. And this will turn it into like a drier, finer. You can see that, how it's busting that all up nice to nice fine little pieces. Much the same effect, only instead of scraping it with your knife, you're just rolling it around with your hands to allow it to bust it up. Now with your ball, like so, you set it in there. Grab your ferro rod again, and again you just want to direct sparks into the bundle. For this one I'm going to be using a little bit of a different method where I will pull the ferro rod out rather than bringing the scraper down onto the ferro rod. Alright guys, sorry about that, the camera died. Now that we got new batteries in it, we'll continue on here. Now that we've got the birch bark all ruffled up with our hands and we got it sitting in here where we want to fire, we'll use our ferro rod and we'll just put a spark to it. Lighting it this way, I'm going to use a little bit different technique with the ferro rod. Rather than bringing the striker down on it and shooting sparks like that, I am going to be bringing the ferro rod up and shooting the sparks down like that. That will allow me to ensure that I'm not going to hit my little bundle there as I bring the striker down. So we'll be doing more of a spray pattern with this one, but let's give it an attempt and see how it goes. So there you go, right away you can see we got flame again. You just want to work it through your bundle. You got plenty of time when you're doing it this way. There's no need to panic. Now that it's liquid, we'll just grab some finer sticks like this and set it on top, and you'll just watch it'll pull through it really quickly and really good. It's a really quick way to get a fire going. Put on a little bit bigger pieces. We're starting to move up into fuel now. You always want to make sure that your implements are well off to the side of the fire so you won't accidentally knock them in. So that's how easy it is to light fire in the boreal forest using just a ferro rod and birch bark. Birch bark again is probably one of the best tinders, if not the best tinder, that you can use in the boreal wilderness. You can light fire very readily with it, and it works well too when it's wet. That is a slightly different process. So if you ever are in a situation where you have to try to utilize the birch bark when it's wet, it still works very well and very much the same way. So imagine, if you will, this is just a birch tree like we had talked about, and it's been pouring rain, everything's wet. You're having a hard time finding dry tinder. You don't need to worry about it. Just take your birch bark, same as we did before. So you go up to your rotted tree or whatever, and you can just, again, not much pressure with your knife, right? You're just breaking the bark. You don't have to do it very hard. And come down, and that's good. I don't need to cut near my leg or anything like that. And because the log is so punky, I can just push through it. Now I'm not going to take much of this off, but when you pull your strings off like this, when we had used this before, we were processing this side of the bark. Now if it's rainy season or it's very moist outside or something like that, you don't want to be using this side because it'll just be wet. So instead, now that you peeled it off, you want to be using this side, and you do it in the same manner where you would use your knife and you would just ruffle this all up here, get that scraped up good, and again it will produce that nice fine dust like that that'll take a spark right away. Very, very good. Doesn't matter what season, winter, summer, spring, pouring rain, torrential downpour, this will get fire lit for you. It is very, very good, and we are very lucky in the boreal to have this stuff to light fire. Fire is one thing that you know, can plague a lot of people when they try to get into bushcraft. They could struggle with it and they can get frustrated, but really, if you know the right stuff to look for, it is very easy to use it. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know it was very short, but I think for beginner videos, And people trying to get into bushcraft, it needs to be short and it needs to be sweet and to the point. So that's birch bark. That's where to find it, how to use it, and how to get a fire going with it with a ferro rod. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like, comment, and subscribe. And we'll see you in the next one.